Today is shortstop, and I do want to get into one piece because there are a lot of guys who are shortstop eligible. Now, we're not going to touch on all these guys because the way we've done this is these guys we've already touched on. Some of these guys, this isn't their primary position, but guys like Mookie Betts, Gunnar Henderson, Matt McClain, guys that we talked about already, Hassan Kim, even a Tyro Estrada, these guys, Ellie De La Cruz, they are great to have if you are allowed to play them at shortstop in your league. Even more so of a reason to go get them. And we talked about them with the other positions. So again, those guys are great, but we're not going to talk about them because there are a lot of guys who are shortstop eligible. Now, of the guys who are really the real quote unquote shortstops, to me, there's a list of 5 guys, and I have a 6th that you don't like as much as I do, but there's a list of, I think, 4.5 guys really. And I'll explain that in a minute. And then it falls off fast. So you got to get one of those top guys or just wait. Like that's it. Like get one of those top guys or get a steal or sleeper later on because there's not much of that in between. What are your thoughts on the shortstop position?
Yeah, I agree with that top 5. There's definitely a top 5. Then there's a drop off. And then, I mean, this shortstop position, much more so than a lot of the other ones, I think this one is you have a cluster and then a big gap and then a cluster and then a big gap. And that's seen pretty much throughout most of the draft, at least up until the first, 400 picks or something like that, maybe even later. So, it's definitely one where the tiers are going to be helpful to at least understand or acknowledge or come up with your own tiers of some sort because, you want to get good value, but you don't want to overpay. I'm not going to reach for a guy just because I really need a shortstop and I want to get one of these guys. I'm okay waiting, but make sure you know and plan out when you're waiting and when you're planning to attack for a shortstop.
My best value, speaking of the waiting when you're planning to attack, I would attack this guy at his ADP. I'm not saying you should reach further, but I think this guy could put up Bobby Witt type numbers at shortstop and probably get drafted 50 picks below him. And that's CJ Abrams, maybe 30 picks below him. But CJ Abrams traded obviously for Juan Soto and the Juan Soto deal going back to that year. This is his 2nd really full season because of that first year. He played a bit with, maybe he played 90 games, I want to say, maybe 40 with the Nationals, 40 with the Padres, something like that. And then last year, I think he played 150, 160, something like that. And then I think this year, the power numbers can go up. The steals have been incredible. And with the power numbers going up, the production's going to go up also. If he can elevate his batting average a little bit, just a little bit, I think CJ Abrams, you're looking at a guy who could be 30 home runs, close to 50 stolen bases, and could be just an absolute league winner. And sure, is a 40 ADP pretty high, something in the 40s or 50s? It might be, but I think he's that good. I think he's worth it. I know you disagree, so let's get right into it.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to go crazy about it. I
see him at 58, by the way, for ADP. That's why it's also kind of why I said it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have. So my ADP for NFBC shows CJ Abrams going 39th or 40th. There's just absolutely no way I'm touching him there because. So you mentioned he could go 30. I don't think there is a world ever in the next 10, 15 years where Abrams hits 30 home runs. I mean, again, my computer is kind of slow right now, but I do know his average EV was 87.4 miles an hour and hit 18 home runs with that. He's not a big guy. He's not strong. He's not going to, I don't think he'll ever get to an 89 average, exit velocity. And because of that, I think it is much more likely, with EVs we see that are this low, I think it's much more likely that he hits closer to 15 than he hits to 25. There's just, I don't think there's more power. I think this is for the power of CJ Abrams, I think this is the cap. Maybe one year he hits 20, but I think we've seen that ceiling of him. Now, the speed is interesting. I do definitely think the speed's legit. You're going to get 40 to 50 stolen bases, but there's no way that I think he is the type of hitter that he, showed last. I'm not going to bet on the power. But, that being said, he is 23. He will probably, get a little bit better as he matures, but he's still he's a below average hitter across the board. I think he's a cheap speed option. I'm not touching him unless he drops, you said he's about 60 in your league. I think that's getting fair. I probably am still waiting until like 75 to 100, somewhere around there. I'm just not paying that.
That's fair. Again, I think, something that's talked about if you watch Nationals games, one of the things that's talked about, and back in the Padres days also, this guy is going to have more power than you think. This is what they keep saying. He looks like a small guy. He has pop though. And he's one of those guys that, I think this is the year where he puts it all together. And I could be wrong on him, but I think this is the year for CJ Abrams. You're going to get those stolen bases. His batting average on balls in play was like uncharacteristically low. I think that can get higher a little bit. And if that moves up 20 points, that totally changes his batting average. Obviously, that totally changes his home runs. And if he's getting on base a little bit more, then you move from 47 stolen bases last year to 55 stolen bases. Then you're talking about close to the top of the league in the stolen base category. Again, I don't think he's a cheap stolen base. I think he's more than that. He had 18 home runs last year. His power feels like it was picking up as the season went on, and I think he's going to build on that. So who is your best? But again, that's fine. We can disagree on that. Who's your best value?
So yeah, I mean, we're going to disagree all the time. That's just part of the business. I think I wrote down 2 here because I couldn't really decide. But number 1, I do think Bichette is pretty good value. I mean, I have him about 39 in most drafts, at least according to NFBC, and that just feels criminally low. I mean, the guy has been as consistent comes, and I think part of the reason that he's dropped so low, right, is because we expected the speed, right? He stole tons of bases in, I don't, again, I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers, but my computer's running slow. But I know so it was it 2021?
5. Yeah, in 2021, he stole 25, and then last year he dropped all the way down to 5.
Yeah, and so I think that's part of the reason why he's regressed, right? Is so he stole 21, right? Or 25 and 21. Too many 20s. And then people were expecting him to put up another 20 stolen base season, and he just didn't run.
Hasn't done it
and
since.
So
yeah, 13
I
and
think,
22 and 5 and 23.
And I think part of that might be team context, right? Maybe they don't want him to run, when you have guys like Vladdy and, I guess not Matt Chapman anymore, but when they have good hitters behind him, maybe they don't need him to run. So, but the thing that he does is he hits. He's one of the best pure hitters in the game. He's got a very safe floor. He plays all the time. He's not riddled with injuries. Again, I think it goes back to how do you draft? And that I like to draft for safety. I think Bichette is one of the safest shortstops that you can find at his price point. I mean, 40 feels criminal. So
do you
best value? Yeah.
The Drake meme where he's like going about that, and then he points to the next thing. He's like looking away from one.
Yeah, and then yeah.
So I'm just thinking like, you like 47 stolen bases and 18 home runs for CJ Abrams. No way. But 20 home runs, only 2 more, but 5 stolen bases, 42 less for Bichette. That I like at 39.
And again, this also goes back to the conversations that we had before on last episode, the counting stats. What do the counting stats look like for CJ Abrams versus what are the counting stats going to look like for Bichette? I'll take the less speed and the average.
73 RBI, 69 runs for Bichette. For CJ Abrams, you're looking at, let me just pull it up real quick. You're looking at 64 RBIs and 83 runs. So he had more runs and he had less RBIs,
but I do think
10 on both sides.
So Bo only played 135. How many games was Abrams at last year?
He did play 151, so more games. Yep.
A little bit more. But yeah, I think Bo is closer. I mean, you look at, again, 2021, he had over 100 in both. 2022, he had over 90 in both. I think it's more likely that we see those. I like to bet. I think on the pure hitting side, I mean, Bo is just a much better hitter. He's going to hit 300 or at least 290 plus. That part's safe. So I think it's the safety and it's knowing what I'm going to get. I'm terrified. Abrams' power is just, I picture him hitting 10 home runs, stealing 40, 50 bases and hitting 250 with less than 75 runs in RBI. That's why. So good point though, that you made. Yeah.
But batting average on balls in play. Do you look at that as a result of how hard they're hitting the ball, or do you look at it as like luck?
There's definitely a little bit of both, but it's how hard they hit the ball. It's how fast they run. Because like Esteury Ruiz has a great BABIP. He's always going to run a high BABIP because he's so fast. And Bichette runs a pretty high BABIP because he hits the ball hard. He hits it well. and I don't think Abrams runs a very good BABIP. So
No,
yeah,
no, yeah. So that's off
Mhm.
by 90 points actually. So Abrams is at 270 and Bichette's at about 360. So
yeah,
that's my point. Where if those average out a little bit, you're looking at one guy going up and one guy going again. Now it could be like you said, it's based on peripherals. If it's not all based on luck, I get that. But for me, it feels like Abrams is going to hire that a little bit, and maybe Bichette. But I like the pick, by the way. I don't want you to think I'm just trying to make my
yeah.
case for Abrams, but
Mhm.
I like the Bichette pick. I think not enough people, when I talked about the 5, he's included in my top 5. Like when you talk about those 5 guys, not enough people look at Bo Bichette as in the same tier as a Seager, Lindor, Trey Turner, and I think he is really close to those guys. So I do like the pick. Your next pick.
Yeah. So my next guy is Anthony Volpe, who he's getting picked around. Let's see, I have him at 135 according to NFBC. So just again feels way too low. Volpe is coming off of a very bad batting average season. I think people look at that and they
209.
see,
Yeah.
right, that's horrible. But what he did do is he went 2020, right? Which is phenomenal for a rookie. So
Yep.
um, I think his batting average is just criminally low already, and yeah, I expect that to rise, and I expect him to continue hitting for power, hitting, stealing, so speed, and he's going to get good counting stats in that Yankees lineup. I think he's going to be a staple. So Anthony Volpe at 135 just feels like too good of a value.
I'm so in on Volpe, and I'm so happy you said it and I didn't have to, because I would get clowned. Oh, you're the Yankee fan. Of course you're in on Volpe. But here's the thing with Volpe. He was 209 last year. If he could raise the average to just 250, then all of a sudden you could see him adding at least 5 more home runs and 10 more stolen bases. And in this lineup, like you said, especially if he's batting if he ultimately can win that leadoff spot and bat at the top of the order with Judge and Soto behind him, all of a sudden this guy becomes a 100-run guy. He's going to score 100 runs and 25 home runs, 30 stolen bases with 100 runs. You'll live with the 250 batting average. That's actually not bad at all. And that means he raised his average by 40 points. And I think that's very realistic for a guy in his second year. Doesn't have all the pressure of everyone last year calling him freaking Derek Jeter. He's in a better lineup now. The lineup last year was abysmal. He played every day. I love Anthony Volpe this year. I don't think it's Yankee bias. Look, I like Bo Bichette also. I like both of your picks. I think they're both good value. I just think, you're talking about 100 picks later, you're going to get Volpe. I really like that as a value play.